First off, Daniel Lavelle, Ms. Strassburger, appreciate you coming tonight. This meeting was called in response to numerous requests by various residents with regard to large parties in the community. As you know, over the last year, we've experienced Wells Fest, which ended up with over 500 people in a one-block area. Through the year, in the academic calendar year, we have a lot of large parties that are happening. But the problem is, you know, people are calling, the police are coming out, and basically they're toning it down, the parties, but then as soon as the officer leaves, it's right back up again. And we're just looking for ways that we can handle it better going into the new year. We're trying to get things that, ways that we can work with the students when they're coming in the fall, ways that we can work with the residents on how to better handle this, and to work with the landlords. So.
Liz, I'm going to pause you there for just 1 second because we seem to have a lot of comments coming in from folks who are joining us virtually about the sound quality. Is that true? Kathy, are you one?
It's up as high as possible, so if you're speaking, just talk loud.
We are now looking at the participants who are online on the screen here in the community room, so we can see you. If you want to turn your cameras on, we can interact with you. And if Kathy, you are able to maximize that window,
Yeah,
we can see folks. So I want to also extend welcome. Thank you so much, Amy Dupart from the Engagement and Community Affairs Office, and Councilman Kraus, and Councilman Lavelle. Thank you very, very much for joining us as well. Did all of you hear? Is this way that we can see everybody? Sorry. What do you do that, right? Did all of you hear Liz's introduction, and does anybody have anything they'd like to say?
Andrea, I don't want to take over the meeting, but I wonder if it would be helpful for those on Zoom to know who's in the room as well.
Most definitely. Would
Okay.
you like to go around? Would you like to
That was Erika Strassburger. Hello.
Officers, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Mayor Griffin John Ford.
Hi, Assistant Chief Linda Barone.
Oh, David Matthai, South Oakland.
And Andrea Boykowicz, I'm the Assistant Director of OPDC.
Hi, I'm Dominic Victoria, or incoming junior, I think, I'm in student government,
Do you live in one of the neighborhoods?
but I live in a boutique garden, so, on, whatever you want to call it, central, sort of thing.
Hi everyone, my name is Derek Dressler. I am the Vice President of Governance at the Student Government Board at the University of Pittsburgh.
And my name is Liz Gray. I'm the Neighborhood Quality Consultant at Oakland Land and Development Corporation. What you missed basically was we say, the reason that we're here is that residents are concerned with ongoing large parties. This has been, for years, basically runs the same cycle. End of the year, we're going to be seeing them. The last couple of weeks in August, we start seeing a lot of them. And I'm not talking about small amount of students. Look at Wells Fest, where we had basically over 500 people in a one block area. Okay. And it went on. And there were numerous students that were there that were underage and they were drinking. And people, we're looking for some kind of control, some better way to better process of how to handle these parties. We have many instances where the officers come and the party gets, everybody quiets down and everything. As soon as the officers leave, they've had their warning, officers leave, it goes right back up again. Okay, so it's turning into this cycle that we then call back again. And the residents are like, well, I've called 3 or 4 times and the same thing keeps happening over and over again. We just need to find a better process. Also for like activities like Wells Fest. You know, how are we gonna handle that? Because I can tell you right now, I'm already hearing about it. This is gonna be happening in August. They're coming back. Wells Fest too.
Hey, Liz, can I interject? Thank you. Hey, do we have someone from the mayor's office here online? I'm just curious.
We did not have anybody here from the mayor's office.
Okay. So I think it might be helpful for everyone to understand the history of this past Wells Fest and how it came to be. And not that I'm saying by any means that I agree with it, but I know it got caught up in law, and law had offered a decision, whereas we had no ability to intervene based on previous events that took place. So I would hope that to begin the conversation on Wells Fest, we start with the law department and the mayor's office and understand how and why that came to be and how we can prevent that first and foremost. If we can prevent the permit from being issued and be able to defend it legally, it seems to me that would be our first and best course of action.
Well, it's been 9 months since Wells Fest. What movement has been made with city law? Is anybody aware of any movement?
No, I'm not. No, but being preemptive for this one, it really would be our best course of action. So we'll start the conversation now.
I have to agree with him on that because we were part of that last year. We tried to prevent it per se, and there were some concerns. We did have, the concern was they didn't have enough prior. We had Central Fest, if you remember, a couple of years before. This pretty much related that as well. I don't think the folks that wanted this anticipated to have it turn like it did. I know Pitt police came in, they handled it. Actually, I think they closed it down at one point and people left. So he's right with what he says with the law department and the mayor's office. It's a new administration. And we have history from last year with the special events permit. We can look at what we experienced last year, talk with the law department and with the mayor's office to help them understand the resources and what goes on in these street parties. I mean, that's basically what it is. The kids came to that one section of Oakland, and really they came from all over. It's not
It was
just
all over social media, Facebook, Reddit, TikTok, the whole. And, you know, the year before, it had been preemptive, okay? So, you know,
Right.
it's the area last year seemed to kind of fade away. And as I said, I'm starting to hear little noises now and everything because these are students. They got away with it last year. So I just really want to see that we're moving in some kind of positive direction with this and not wait until a week before. You know?
Hey, Liz, may I add one other thing too, please? Who's here representing the university? Is Jamie here by any chance? Just curious.
I'm here, Bruce.
Hi, Jamie. How are you?
Hey,
Nice
how
to
you
see
doing?
you.
Nice
Hey,
to see you.
In previous years, we had backing by the university to intervene and to keep Wells Fest from happening. I don't remember the particulars of this last one, but there was not an appetite by the university to intervene, and I can't remember the particulars. And I'm wondering if we can't revisit that and try to figure out a partnership between city and university.
Well, I do believe that we worked with James in our office to, again, try and prevent that permit. And we were told by the city that they were able to file legally. Previously, I don't think that our students had actually pursued the correct course of action, which is why we were able to sort of shut down in a different way. This time, they sort of followed the special events route and were able to proceed despite the fact that we had warning there.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you, Jamie.
That thread. So, and this is Erika talking here, example. Sort of unrelated to these parties, special events over the last 2 years has been looking at greater coordination between the Office of Special Events and Department of Public Works and Public Safety as well. As I know, in the district I represent, for instance, I know that public safety is aware, police are aware. There have been incidents where, say, someone has applied for a permit for a party in Mellon Park, rented out the shelter, and then it becomes a really big festival with like street vendors and selling of alcohol. And, during COVID, there was a hesitancy to want to shut that down because these are people who were trying to make a living selling their wares, but it was a bait and switch. And it feels not totally unrelated to this. I mean, the whole process of special event permitting, has been, we've been looking at it as a city and looking at how you make sure that there's due diligence on the front end, it's clearly communicated, and that there are sort of like implied threats if you don't follow the rules, and then really, clear enforcement on the back end if you don't follow through with the event that you're planning. If it's a much bigger event. So I kind of wanted to just bring that up too, because I know that those conversations are happening in case there was an update or anything from the city, or I'd be happy to follow that thread at the city a little bit more too.
One of the things that did occur last year, and I asked numerous people, according to the special events web page, one of the requirements is that they circulate a petition to all people that live on that block.
Yeah.
I can have 2 long-term residents that live on that block, never saw a petition. And they actually were barricaded in their houses. They could not leave their house because, the amount of people in the street and on the sidewalk. We had several landlords that had damage to their property from students climbing around. We don't want it to happen again. We're looking for assurances. We're looking to see, what kind of steps are being taken. But it's not just that kind of party. I can name 5 party houses in the 5 years I've been doing this. Same houses, same houses. There's 3 on, there's 2 on Dawson. There is 1 over on Long Street, and every year we go through the same thing, and it's not changing. And the residents here, I hear the same complaints, and to be honest, in the current climate and the situation that we're in, with what's been happening across the city, and I'm not just talking about the north side. I live on the south side. I will not go to Carson Street on the weekend. I will not. Okay. But it's like a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. Plus, people have their homes here. They're invested in their community, and it's like just being swallowed up. But,
Hey, Liz, can I jump in? Thank you. I can't resist. I wonder, I'm not sure who's all in the room, and I'm not sure if Chief Barone might be able to assist with this or not, but repeat offenders, even though different tenants come and go, leads me to believe that the problem systemically lies with the owners of the property. And that where the intervention needs to happen is with those owners. We need to let them know in certain terms that they risk whatever liabilities they would have in permitting that kind of behavior to continue on property they own. Part of it, I think, our Chief Barone, is the social host ordinance that we put on the books 10 years ago, which I think if we did a retraining of some of the officers to understand the application of that, we might be able to curtail it, at least in terms of the lessees, but we still need to intervene with the lessor.
Councilman, you're right. We have done, and I know that we've been working with the new coordinator for the properties. I know they're working with a different system that we have. We still are putting and identifying those properties, whether it's businesses or whether it's residents, identifying them as disruptive properties following under the criteria that is set forth in the ordinance. What I have asked and working with the coordinator is that if we have, at the very least, what we have to do right now is to send a letter, not so much a warning letter, but an educating letter as to what we have on the books right now. And here are their responsibilities, and here's what could happen if they meet that criteria. Now, I know that they're reorganizing the back end of it, but starting at the very least, sending those letters and to educate. The second thing we've been doing, especially with the businesses where they have pop-up parties, where they locations that we find out, we can ahead of time, we actually go and talk to, and this is pretty funny how they have it. You have the owner of the property, then you have the leasee of the property, and then you have the subletter of the property.
Yes.
You have to follow those things, but the property is what we've been doing. And we're telling them and having a conversation saying, look, you're leasing the property out to this person is subletting it to this group. Anything that happens, all three of you will be held responsible for this, and especially after what happened on the north side. We do see things coming in, and we do see things the longer it gets, the more activity we see. So we're addressing them. We find out, if you know that you have them problem houses, if you know that you have businesses that rent out their spaces for these kind of events, we need to know about that, because on the front side of it, we will approach them before the date even comes and say, look, you know, this is what kind of actions we're going to take. This is what your responsibility is for that. So I know we've been doing more of them, and granted, I want to say that, you know, we shut down one and they pop up at another location. We keep going in that direction.
Yeah.
It is the owner's responsibility to be good neighbors, good community members. So that's what we're doing with the businesses, with the properties that we know. We know Oakland, it's not just Oakland, Southside, constantly are addressing individual properties on a one-to-one level. There's a lot of them, even with the businesses on the south side corridor. You know, they bring in events and from them, especially underage, which really creates problems for us. As long as they, I think, have a license as a and have those underage events. And again, that's bringing people into the south side, and they stay there Thursday nights with the underage nights. Several of the businesses down there saying, look, we saw the trend change last year, and this is what we can attribute that to. So Oakland, the same way, you have a lot of issues with rentals, transient people. We just have to keep at it.
Well, we do,
And I asked,
I just wanted to say that Kathy has her hand up here. Thanks very much for sharing to speak.
Thank you. I'm Kathy Gallagher. I think you can hear me. I want to agree with Liz. You know, I've been doing this all my life, which is for a very long time. We have the same properties that are the party houses every year for a lot more than 5, like maybe 40. But it's different people each year. And when you say the owners have responsibility, they do. But if we don't have citations issued, then the owner doesn't even know there's a party going on. They don't care. So in our particular situation, I agree with Liz. The police come, they go to the door, they go to the top of the street, the party starts all over again. In our case, they've moved the parties to the back and we have what we call the party run. 4 houses in a row, and they run out the door and into the next house when the police come. So for a while, there was a policy in place that if the police came to a party, one of these big loud parties, that there had to be a citation issued or there had to be a report as to why there was no citation. So I'm wondering if that policy is still in place. And also, I mean, well, how do we get to the owners if there are no citations issued for the disruptive party? We don't have any way to transfer that responsibility back to the owner. Thank you.
I want to take this moment also to welcome Carla Gonzalo, the new Dean of Students at Pitt. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry that you missed the introduction first time around. I apologize.
Yeah, sorry. On my calendar, it was put in at 6:15, so I apologize for being late. I understand that you started a little bit earlier, so thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm not able to stay too long. This was added to my calendar quite recently, so I apologize, but happy to be here and listen in. Thank you.
Can I ask, it used to be the process was if you were issued a citation, then there was a checkbox that the officer would fill in, and that they over to something going to nuisance property. Well, nuisance property has been kind of invisible for a couple of years now, but it's getting back into operation. The thing is, when they come and they tell them to turn down the noise, that checkbox isn't getting checked. You know, as Kathy says, that the citation is not being written, the checkbox is not being checked, to which no information is being relayed. Is there some way legally, and I know it's a convoluted situation, you can indicate or maintain a database of addresses that you keep getting called back to get the noise turned down, to you know, get the kids to settle down, whatever, you know, because this is the just over. We can't call the same. It's just the repetition and the frustration of the homeowners. You know, I'm sure it's the last thing you guys want is to be called out again to the same address. I mean, earlier in April, we had the party on Ophelia Street. One car came out, ended up, resident called 4 times. Second, when they came back again, there was 4 cars. Okay, and they broke up the party. But
Well, here's what we can do. I know that there's a lot of going on. At the very least, they can generate a report. And what we have done with the nuisance property previously, and I know that we use it as a pattern of activity that occurs, that if you have several nuisance properties and we've gotten, I mean, and I know that zones, not just your zones, but other zones, they know the problem properties. They're, along with the reports that they generate, what we used to do, and I'm going back a few years, as I was heavily involved in this property projects, we used to, aside from the actions that were taken against a property, whether it was a citation, whether we broke up the party, whether we made an arrest, we used to, when they met the criteria, when we went in front of the board, we used to have the calls for service with them as well, to use a supporting documentation that says, here's all the activity that occurred, this is the actions that we took, but here's all supporting documentation on the calls for service where it's affecting their neighbors. And that added some support to that ordinance criteria that we went in front of the board at the time. So in the background, we still have that, that piece of data that we can utilize to add on to these reports and these actions that are taken at these properties that give you a more stronger hold on action being needed for that particular property and for that particular owner. That's something we could look at to make sure it's done across the board. When officers get calls there to generate, at the very least, if they get there, turn down the music, you leave, you get another call back and the music's back up again, then turn on the party and generate the reports. That can be done.
But
What we need to do is start citing people to underage kids. I believe we've done that in the past. Any are there, break the party, start citing kids. In a particular thing, you have a party, you have 3, 4 people, that's 3, 4 citations that reaches the criteria for this.
Liz, can I jump in? Yeah, thank you. Hey, Chief Barone, that brings up a point that I would like to explore. What legally provokes an officer to be able to actually enter a house party like that or a property under the suspicion that there's underage consumption taking place? What's the connection from the officer being outside to being able to gain access inside to actually begin asking for IDs?
They can ask to come in. That's a touching, you know, you're at a someone's domain, somebody's home. You can ask to go in, you can ask to speak. Who's having this? You can ask if you could come in there, but you have to have some reason to gain entry in there. If there's fights, if there's some sort of a intoxicated young people, if you can attribute to who's out on the porch and you see the ID as a young person, you know, you can ask to go ahead and check the other ones in there. You really have to have some reason to go in. And again, if there are underage drinkers there and you're concerned about the welfare of these underage drinkers, then you can ask to go and say, hey, I need to see who's in there. I need to see how many people. Some will let you in and some will give you more time.
It's still, this is Commander Burke, it's still difficult to get in. But what we've tried is different ways. And Chief Hedlund, it's a safety issue if we see someone. But the problem is if you can't tell, or if you try to get the information at the door, at least who's there, or the owner, it's hard. I don't know about you guys, but it's hard sometimes to tell if someone's 18 or 21. You know, the older I get, the harder it is. So, and then it's hard to do. So you really try to get, you know, we work different ways of trying to get information from individuals. And just by them being there alone, we cited 15 people. In court, we would lose some because we didn't actually see them drinking. You know, they were there, they were invited by the homeowner or whoever was renting the house. And without us, normally we would just wrap up a bunch of people. And then when you go to the hearing, you know, Commander, did you see John Smith actually take a drink? And I can't lie, of course I didn't. You know, so they would be getting dismissal. We would sit up on a house and watch it, and then watch them where they're coming from. We can approach them when we're encountering, etc. But as far as getting in the home, it can be very difficult.
Okay, what about going after the party host?
What's that?
What about going after the party host, the person that is supplying the alcohol? Cup parties, you know.
What we do
Cost
then is we go whoever is renting or owns, because if we can't see who's actually supplying alcohol, we have to go whoever's renting the place or owns it. You know, because you can't, it's hard to see where it's coming from. It's already there. So we don't know who, you know, we try to get there early, like when we do the details in the fall. It's us, Pitt, Carnegie Mellon, and we get there early because, You know, someone has to bring it, someone has to bring the keg, someone has to bring the beer. So then we can see where it's coming from. But like the party on Philly Street that I looked up the other day, officers responded, Pitt was already there evacuating the home, according to the CAD report. So all the activity was stopped by the time we got there. We were just helping them get people out. But when we do the detail, we're already there. We can see them migrating there, who's bringing the booze, etc. And then that gives us more, we actually see them with it. So we can try to find out if there are days, you know, if there's some circumstances we can use to do that.
Do you still have an officer that is watching social media, you know, all the different platforms? Because
Yeah, and that's what Chief brought up the other day. We got information that a house, I think it was north side, or south side, was having a marijuana party. You could buy it there, you could bring your own.
No, that was north side.
That was north
Actually,
side?
it was two of them, it was 420 day.
And that was, we got that off social media, so we monitor that all the time. And we get, like when you send me an email or something, we get additional information from you as well. As soon as we get that, we handle it in zone, but also give the intel because it's citywide. You know, and like she said, we go here and the people who host these parties, we're starting to recognize their name. They'll ring here. And then we'll get an advertisement from the party and we'll dig through the layers. It's the same people, you know, twice removed. Oh, here, same people, twice removed. We know their names. So.
And we actually were successful in both homicides and like when we got that information up front, because we then went to the owner,
Right.
we went to the leasee and told them, somewhat, can have this party, we're gonna be out front. In fact, we went as far as to put a car sitting out front on the one on the north side, just as a preventative measure, letting people know that we're here, we're not gonna let
And
you
no party.
have the party. So,
I'm going to just interject one more second to acknowledge that Rebecca Rinaldo from the mayor's office has come into the office. Bruce was asking earlier, he's going to be, so let everybody know. And do you want to say something?
No, I'm just here to observe and report back and support the solutions agreed upon tonight. So thank you all for having me. Apologies for being late. I had another run late.
And Kathy,
What?
you raised your hand.
Oh, yeah.
Well, may I?
There's an underage curfew in the city, isn't there? I assume there is.
no,
You're kidding.
We'll be right back.
and there's no curfew center to which to take them.
Right.
For my, oh my
unless
God.
you're
That was
driving a
years
car, junior license.
That was years ago.
Oh my God, I can't believe it.
There was a lot. And then what you can do if you saw them, if they're sitting on my stoop in front of my house, you can't do anything.
Wow.
If they have no permission to do something.
Bruce, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Rebecca, it's Councilman Kraus.
See you. Hello.
Hi. Hi. So with, excuse me, with all due respect, and my intent is not to be confrontational, we are going to lean heavily on the administrators to provide solution. It is not your legislators that you know, we can assist with crafting legislation, which we have done multiple times, but we're going to lean heavily on administrators who oversee code enforcement, nighttime inspectors, police officers, to be part, if not just part, but leaders in crafting the solution to these problems.
I hear you, and this is my first meeting with Oakwatch since taking this job, and so I came tonight kind of to just hear what conversation may already be in place before I insert myself. But absolutely, I hear what you're saying, and want to just hear where things are first before we start trying to take the lead. And you all have been doing this work for many years, so
Many years. Many years. I'm about 17 years into it. So you can imagine and appreciate the frustration of residents that live with this day in and day out. And we have entered a new frontier, which was spoken about before you were able to join us. And that is what is known as the event space now, and retail space and privately held property being rented out through multiple channels to host events. Which we already saw on the north side how that turned out, and we're working very hard to make certain that something like that doesn't indeed happen again. But this is the new frontier, and officers, please correct me if I'm wrong, but oftentimes these event spaces, as crafted, if and when there are citations issued, they are largely not residents or city residents, I should say, but they come from multiple locations around the county.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yes.
So, officer, may I ask you another question, please? When someone does answer the door, when you do your knock and talk, if you will, are you legally entitled to ask for the identification of the person that answered the door to see if that person is of age or underage?
Yeah, we ask multiple questions, but if it's almost like a mere encounter, if they don't answer us, and we can't say that they're committing any kind of crime. That person.
But are you, I'm sorry, officer, are you permitted to ask for identification for them to provide a driver's license or student ID or something along those lines?
They don't have to provide.
Yeah, we do that. We ask for identification in any form, but they're under no obligation to give it to us.
Okay, that's what I needed to understand. What about, are you able to ask who the leaseholder is of the property and if they're on site?
Sure.
Yes.
Now,
officer, what largely is the reaction when you ask for who's holding the lease on the property that you want to meet with them?
I mean, it runs a gamut. It could be anything from my cousins, my parents. I have permission to be here. What legal authority do you have to do what you're doing? I mean, now, criminal activity occurring, we're really limited going past that. We can keep asking, but they can keep telling us multiple answers or non-answers at all.
okay, but sidewalk, is that the same scenario? Once they're out of the house?
No, I mean, there's no obligation to.
They just do it, okay.
It's called, we do this called a mere encounter, where you can go up to anybody unless you see where there's, maybe you think there's some criminal activity and what they do. You can take someone, investigative stop, but if you're just walking down the street and I approach you and ask you anything, I'm allowed to do that, as long as I don't impede you. You're not under any obligation to answer me.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking we're along the line. Tonight I had 5 exceedingly drunk college students.
What's that?
I had 5 exceedingly drunk college students when I was living in a village come dancing down the street. And if they're dancing down the street in the middle of the night and they're obviously intoxicated.
Well, that's different.
Okay,
That's
okay, so
because I'm under the pressure they could be sick. They may need medical attention. So I want to know what's going on. That's different from someone just walking down, not doing anything else.
a lot of what we run into, as Kathy was saying, and Kathy, well, actually, Kathy, you've got a question. Let's go with you next.
I just wanted to comment on, first of all, I agree with Councilman Kraus that we are in a new frontier. And as we are considering policies to prevent these huge parties, I think we have to acknowledge that they've changed over the years. For example, we used to see the kegs delivered at noon, or the police would come and there's a keg sitting there on the porch. They don't have keg parties anymore. We don't see kegs. We see multiple students walking up the street with bottles from the state store. So in that respect, it's not quite as obvious in the afternoon when the keg was delivered. That's one thing. We also, on our street, We might have 4 big parties going on one night, but they always have a spotter outside. So when you call the police, the minute the police car turns the corner, the spotter alerts the 4 houses, and everybody either goes in the back of the house or they congregate in one house and turn off the lights. So, I think we can't approach trying to contain these parties in the same manners that we have in the past, because they're a lot more, they're better at it these days than they used to be. So I think if we're talking about policies, I think we have to consider the fact that many times the police are called. When they come, there are no lights on in the house, there's no evidence of a party, but it's not because the party's not going on. It's because the spotter has alerted them, they're in the back of the house or in their house next door. Thank you.
It's correct. We have to understand too, okay, this is illegal state, so when we approach them, a lot of them don't think, or think that we can approach them. But when we do, even then, it's just a mere encounter, unless they look like they're 12, and then we can kind of, go from there. But what else helps is once we get there, we had discussed that day about Becker Street. We know once we issue citations that a lot of them will just pay it, but if we bring a police officer from Pitt who can identify them as being, where maybe they would go up against the board, which would affect their future education, that means a lot more with the citation than just, a college person getting a citation, paying it for community service and having it removed. So
the information about the citation is there, that's not shared with the university?
what's that? Well, we have to figure if they're student, a lot of times we don't know who they are. But when we have Pitt or Carnegie Mellon, sometimes they can identify, they're affiliated with our university, and then they can take it from that point on.
And the information is shared, I have to say, because the students really don't want the university to know that they're involved with the police in some form or manner. And that doesn't matter what university we're talking about. If we have a house and we realize that some of the students from Pitt or CMUs who came, we will call up, and we've contacted each of the universities and say, hey, look, we have a house here, we have this issue there, and these are some of the students we've identified that they were students. And I'll tell you that when they reach out to those students, it really does have teeth more than what we can do, because they do not want to have issues with their education, and maybe having to call the parents.
With the rental registration, you could have access to the data that's going to be brought in on the owners of properties. Like they will be required to have somebody within a certain reach that can respond to the. Do you have access to that?
You were speaking about it.
That will be a public database. Everyone will have access to the registered rental.
I know you'll like that.
Oh, yes, I will.
That's something I recently learned from Sarah Kincher, so I just thought that was.
Liz, could I jump in again?
Rebecca has a question here, sorry, maybe you can.
Sorry if you already discussed this, and I was like, did you already discuss the disruptive properties ordinance piece of this and then the work? I know some folks have had the new coordinator out to their meetings to talk about how that is kind of being freshly looked. I just wanted to see if that is involved in this conversation.
I think we just lost John Kirsty.
Okay, who the person who's part of that. We discussed some of the nuisance parking issues, but not really that we have a new coordinator. The last person that I met with was actually the assistant admin person coming in.
Is that me, Liz? Can I jump in?
Well, I just wanted to, because John unmuted himself and then muted himself again. I was not sure if he was trying to.
John is working for the.
Sorry. Go ahead, John?
Okay, I'm sorry. You're echoing really bad. I couldn't hear you. What's the question?
The question was, to what extent can nuisance properties, or excuse me, disruptive properties, be brought into play in this issue? Meaning, like, what are the, is there any option to repeat properties where there are these kinds of repetitive complaints? Is there any obstacle to those being recorded properly as disruptive properties? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, from what I recall, when I used to be on, with you all doing this work here in this community, we really relied on that tool as a preventative tool, because when property owners get so many of these notices and they have to start refunding the city for public safety services, they are more incentivized to better vet tenants and more strictly enforce some of the rules of their leases. That's what it was designed to do, and I think it has had some success in the past operating that way. And so I just want to, as part of this conversation, and see if we're able to continue using that as one of the tools in our toolbox.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that can be done. As it's been acknowledged already during this meeting, it was very strong, the department, the operations of disruptive properties. It's been on hiatus for the past number of years. Council has done a yeoman's job in reconstructing some of the language, with the ordinances. We recently, in the past few months, have hired a new disruptive property coordinator, Angie Brundage, who she is listening in on the meeting. But I think there's still some things that are being worked out right now, and part of it has to deal with the police in terms of how these are being reported. We're also working with 311 on, as was described by Chief Barone, constructing listings of properties that are consecutively and consistently having reported problems with them, but they're not to the level of being disruptive when the police get there. We need to show a pattern of behavior. So we will be continuing to evolve on this and develop this. Ms. Brundage will come to a future meeting and talk to you more specifically about these things, because I know she's looking forward to working with everybody on this. And of course, as always, I'll do whatever I can to assist you on this.
So I have a follow-up question, John.
Yes.
Would it be possible when the police arrive at some of these properties where the parties are having underage drinking, whatever the case may be, and they cite someone at the properties, would it be possible for that notification to then be sent to the disruptive properties list so that they can begin compiling how many citations are happening at a certain property, and then it automatically sort of triggers?
That should automatically be happening with the police reports.
Okay.
Chief, are you still there?
What happens on the front side currently, when an officer generates a report or citation, because it's done electronically, it then falls under the criteria of disruptive properties. There's a button there that says, we believe it's disruptive property. Click it. What it then does, it goes up to the commander. They agree, disagree, they add more information, and other commanders can add to that as well from investigations. So if we have a business, a bar historically has had issues, the use narcotics and vice supervisor, just so that everybody can put the information in. Once it's approved as a disruptive property following the criteria, then on the back side, the disruptive property coordinator can pull those reports, can pull those notifications. It goes up on the back end to notify the coordinator that, hey, we have a disruptive property that's been identified and approved through the police. And what ends up that, again, I know that we're re-envisioning it and adding different things to it. we still will use 311, PLI, any information that they have, as well as calls for service, to show that there's a pattern, there's a problem with this particular property. So the more documentation and data we can acquire, the better chance we have to hold the property owner accountable and to make changes. If you understand what I'm saying. And I'm going back from the board that was in fact installed. There was attorneys there were a DA's office. At times we brought them in to take legal action because of some of the properties that we've had issues with time and time again. There is something that they could do as well, is to work like a consent decree for that property or that business that says you will do you promise to do A, B, C, and D to change some of the behavior of your patrons. If that is not fulfilled, then we take additional actions after it, if that makes sense.
Councilman, when this was in the process before, we, in our office, we would aggressively listen to the community groups complain about certain properties. We would then go back individually and go to PLI and go to 311 and ask them to do a search on their databases of any type of citations at all associated with these properties or any complaints have been filed. And we would then process that on a collective list to the disruptive property so they can begin building their comprehensive list. So we're totally on that. And but I think as the chief has said, it has to go through the process that has to be acknowledged by the police. It has to be approved by their particular commander. And then from that point, we go forward. Of course, as you probably know, I know Councilman Kraus knows this, then there's also the judicial process that goes through, and lots of times our courts don't uphold the findings that are happening by our PLI. And as a matter of fact, there used to be one particular common police court judge who listened to appeals who was totally disrespectful to our PIL members and kind of laughed in their faces when these items came up to rest. So, but Councilman Lavelle, anytime I can help you, feel free. We'll continue to work hard on this. And as the chief had said, revisioning, remaking, we're basically, now that we're resurrecting this whole process again, we're taking into consideration some of the things that have come up, such as what Councilman Kraus had said about these newer problems. We have to be aggressively looking for, not waiting for them to happen.
Rebecca, you had a question? Sorry, just wanted to make sure.
Apologies, I thought you were done earlier, didn't mean to interrupt. Has the University of Pittsburgh Police been given access to using this tool just as the Pittsburgh Police can? Because what I recall, that was a big, that would be a big success in this work, right? Because they are often the ones who respond to these issues.
Well, I think what we've done, that's our own internal police reporting system. But they don't have access to it, but what we do is share reports and share actions. We utilize what they have as well. We share back and forth with it. And I know that we have a good rapport with all of the universities for going back forever, because we know some of the problems that come up every year, especially as the weather gets warmer, the problems that we see. So we share information between the universities as well as us to get, again, the file built for individual properties that we know we have issues with.
Hey, Liz, may I jump in? Rebecca, you're going exactly where I wanted to go as well. I'm sorry, you're going exactly where I wanted to go as well. And I wonder if we could bring Jamie back into the conversation to talk about how the avenues of communication between Pittsburgh Police and University Police take place when we have made stops at a party. Jamie, are you still with us?
I'm here. So
Hi.
University of Pittsburgh Police and Zone 4 do share a lot of information. The process of how that then makes it back to our conduct office and my office, though, is what's changed. So I recently just reached out to Sergeant Riley. She's the current head of our community relations unit. There's actually going to be a shift in leadership there. So You know, I'm waiting to see who our best point of contact is going to be. During the pandemic, we assembled a cross-functional team across student affairs, conduct, police, and others to be able to keep a very close eye on what was happening in the neighborhood. That's going to be coming back in a permanent fashion. And so we're working to just see who are going to be the right folks at the table to be able to respond. In the interim, I am going to be having standing Monday meetings with our Pitt police so that I'm able to just proactively ask, hey, what happened on the impact detail? What is it that we need to do? And who do we need to talk to? I also wanted to flag for everyone that Pitt does have a concern connection where folks can log concerns, offer us addresses. It does not necessarily need to be tied to a citation in order for us to act. So if folks use the concern connection, if they are specific about the households that they suspect are being occupied by Pitt students, that gives us the data that we need to be able to make some movement on the conduct end without a citation. And I'm happy to put those links into the chat. It's also part of the May updates that I sent out to a number of our community members. And so Liz, you do have that hyperlink to the Concern Connection page in our update.
That's very helpful, Jamie. Thank you so much. Rebecca, can I go back to you for a second, please?
Yes, yeah, Councilman Doe.
Hi. Hi, so thank you for being here. And I think what you're hearing here is the clear desire for the reconstitution of the Disruptive Property Department, for a lack of a better terminology. I wish I could speak to why it fell by the wayside in the previous administration, but I can't, and I don't think any of us really can, only that we know that we have seen the effects of it and that they have not been positive. And so if there was anything that I would ask that you would take back to Mayor Gainey and to the administration would be the clear desire of this community to see that the reconstitution of disruptive property to its former stature, and whatever assistance that you would need from City Council, whether it is crafting or amending additional ordinance or supplying funding that needs to happen to make that department happen, we stand ready. And I'm speaking for my colleagues, so please forgive me, but we would stand ready to assist in that. So I would greatly appreciate if you'd carry that message back.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I had a question, which is a little bit less about the kind of, we've been talking a lot about what happens before the property before a party becomes a problem, and we've been talking a lot about what happens after the party has been identified as a problem. How do we follow up with repeated complaints? And I guess I have a question about what's the most appropriate action to take while a party is taking place, which is to say, what's the guidance that we can offer to neighbors about how they should deal with loud, disruptive, dangerous, threatening behavior from big parties that they might not feel safe, approaching directly. What's the best course of action, and how can they then, as individuals, follow up in the system? I don't know to whom I'm asking. Yeah, throwing it out there.
Actually, we'd like for you to call when it starts to become disruptive and not wait till it gets to be a big problem.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you see that there's a particular house, and the commander, I'm sure, can identify it quite a few of them. But if your neighbors see that there's issues that are coming from a particular house, there's many things they can do in preparation. We say 311 to call as part of documentation that, hey, this happened here. That comes up to us if it's a police matter. If it's happening at that point, call 911. We have no emergency number. 911 is where all of our cars get dispatched. You've got to call 911. I don't care if you call them continuously. We have, when you call 911, it generates a call for service and it generates a response. 311 does as well, but that could be something that you know that doesn't need immediate attention, but we can follow up with. Those calls, that information that you garnered there, whether you see, as somebody mentioned about, you have a spotter out there, you see the spotter, you know what the spotter looks like. You can always choose not to see the police, but you can give that information there so that the officers know who to look as a spotter. If you know that they're going in the back of the house, if there's a easement or some sort of a breezeway between row houses, give that information so that the officers know going in, hey, if it's quiet now, and see if they're in the back, if they can hear stuff. If the music goes down and they leave and it's turned up again, they get another call back there, then they should go in because now it's a second call in, they've been warned, and then you can cite. There's things that can build up to it. Information and knowledge is powerful for us. When we can get information and really use that to all of our advantage to take action, it doesn't necessarily mean we always have to have somebody testify, but build those patterns and build that database against a homeowner. That's our best defense. We're not saying everybody is doing that, but we have got to be there. We've got to.
Like you said, in addition to that, what we're finding out too, like I'll get an email from Liz. You know, sometimes it concerns me because in a particular email, a person actually saw what they thought was a weapon and moved it from inside the car to the trunk. And I don't know if it was or not, but they thought it was. We don't get that information. That's what we want. You know, you're not bothering us by calling us. This is what we do. And in addition to that, everybody, without jeopardizing or exposing yourself, has one of these. You know, the day after, we can try to find Ring doorbell video, camera video. You know, once we get that information, it gives us something to go on. We can do it on the back end and try to find out or corroborate whatever you're telling us. You can't do it if you don't give it to us. I mean, I'll get a video of certain things, and we have it. We don't need you. We can follow up. You can stay anonymous. But that gives us something to work with. And like you said, if we see someone through a Ring video stumbling down, you know, falling over, we got that. That's memorialized. You know, we can use that. We can identify that person. If it's a Pitt student, any college student, we can take it a step forward. But any information that you get or you think it may be information, call it in, you know, because we see over and over again where we'll see a next door video or that, you know, 2 weeks ago, I saw this person prowling around in my neighbor's yard. And instead of calling right now, you know, we want that information as soon as you get it. You know, as soon as better.
That brings up a good point because they don't say video forever. There's time frames that, depending on what your vendor is or your provider, there's time frames that they may set on how long they keep video on it. Even with our own citywide cameras, you know, we have a time frame.
And we're limited to what we can see. We call Pitt, and their cameras fill in the gaps because they have a great system, which helped us many times. You know, and a lot of these new students don't know it's there. You know, when we see like going to the celebration with the couch, you know, we see that, you know, they don't know what's going on. But if someone alerts us to it, like I said, the sooner the better. You know, if we can issue citation or citations, we will. If someone peeing out on the sidewalk, stuff like that, we can use them.
The call service that Pitt responds to, do you still look at that data?
What's that?
Call service. If a call comes in from something or the Dustin Street and Pitt responds, but you still get the data
We're on the
that
same
the call
channel.
was made.
If they go, if we hear, if they get called, we'll come to back them up. And we get a call, they hear the same thing, they come back up.
Okay, it's just, I'm asking about tracking the data that call to service, that data. Our biggest frustration is, it's years that I called and got quiet, then I called again, and it's just for the residents, it's very
Says there's a
frustrating.
record of it, we got a capture of that.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
And I was looking on 311, trying to find exactly what type of issue a resident would file on. Because if, they can file the next day, say, well, last night I could call the police X amount of time, I've already had, blah, 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 blah. The only thing that they've got listed here that I can find, like, appropriate excessive noise disturbances. Are you receiving that for 311?
When the call comes in, whatever the call
No.
is,
On 311, not.
301.
They send it to the zone of occurrence. They send it to the zone of occurrence, and there are times they send it up to administration. And I get them. If we got additional calls or continuous calls, they will send it if they have a loud party, they'll send it to the zone of occurrence. If they have, for example, drug sales from a house, they'll send it to the zone of occurrence, as well as narcotics and vice. So each duty location has a responsibility for things that occur, so they can send it to multiple places.
Okay, I just, I want to be able to tell the residents, okay, you called the police last night and everything, today, please go on 311, file an excessive noise / disturbance complaint against that address so that this is documented. It's one thing I keep asking people to do, we need to document. I'm very happy, I've been over here in the middle of the night when a resident has called me. Yeah, I will come over and I will, ask for if there's a citation, I'll ask for, is there a record number, anything that I can use to track? Okay, so that we're trying to, also see what's going on. As I said, there's, and Kathy said, there are houses that we've been looking at and you guys have been looking at year after year after year. And it's not the same people because eventually they do graduate, So it's just like it's this tradition being passed along in the same locations. And it's very, very frustrating.
And that's where the owners come in.
Jeff.
My name is Jeff Becker. I live at 200 Ophelia Street, and I'm late. I apologize. I had some work I had to do. So I just want to ask if you got to the issue I raised with you, Liz and Andrea, at 210 Ophelia Street. Have you talked about that, or should I bring that up?
Well, you were the one that witnessed the whole thing, so it's probably.
Yeah, well, it's not just me, but 3 or 4 police cars also. So on April 2nd, 210 Ophelia Street is turned into one of these Airbnb party houses. I sent emails to Bruce Kraus and to Councilman Lavelle too. You guys probably got my emails. I wanted to consider legislation about the Airbnbs. Thank you. So on that night, it was one of these crazy, this house typically has had these parties before. Not all the time, but 3 or 4 times a year. It's a new construction in an old neighborhood and is turned into a Airbnb rental. So on April 2nd, this might have been what you were referring to, Commander, about the gun in the trunk. So on April 2nd, they had a party that was so big that there were cars ringing the block of Lawn and Ophelia Street, dropping people off and picking people up. I called because I couldn't sleep. It was after 11 o'clock, and also because cars had blocked my driveway. And police responded in a, very, I thought, timely time for that time of the night, Saturday evening. Had 2 cars towed, left. I don't think the police officer was at the top of the hill before someone parked in front of my driveway again. I mean, it was just that kind of party. So I called again, and the Chester, the towing company got stuck in traffic, couldn't get to that car, and eventually left. But police came and I think sort of gradually broke the party down. There were hundreds of people at this house. I know that because I counted about 100 as they left and I lost track. Some maybe from the universities, I don't know, because I watched people peel up Ford's Avenue underneath the Boulevard of the Allies Bridge, and people were getting in lots and lots of ride share, lots of young people. And I sort of signed this off as a sort of a typical, you know, crazy Oakland party house, social media driven, disruptive thing that we've been fighting, as Liz and Andrea and others have mentioned, for years. But you know about this house because you guys were there. So I just wondered what follow-up happened. And I didn't want to say this. So as I was watching the party break up, there was a car parked in front of my house. I watched 4 young men approach the car. I didn't really pay them a lot of mind until I saw them open the passenger door in the rear and pull a gun out of the back seat. They pulled a gun out of the back seat, wrapped it in a towel, put it in the trunk, and drove away. And I gotta tell you, that didn't take more than 20 seconds. I didn't feel like I had enough time to even call police to say what I had just seen, and they were gone. I assume they didn't want to be stopped by police who were breaking up the party and have a gun visible in the back seat. I mentioned this to some of my neighbors, but then the incident happened on the north side, and that sort of put the whole incident into a different frame. I felt like we were probably one argument or dispute or alcohol fuel disagreement away from what happened on the north side. So you guys don't know, this house at 210 Ophelia Street is repeatedly used as a large party, social media driven house. You responded to it that way. So I'm curious what follow-up has happened as a result of that. You know, you have 4 cars there and police were working to manage the crowd and get people out. What follow-up happened there? You don't have to tell me tonight, but I think that there should be follow-up. And I found the owner in a minute. How did I find the owner? Well, I looked up on the county website, the address of the house. It's registered to an LLC, which you say, oh crap, what am I gonna do about that? Turns out the tax mailing goes to an individual who lives in Ross Township. So the house is apparently not owned through a mortgage company, but is owned by this couple. So I can tell you their address, or you can do what I just did and go to the house, go to the address on the county real estate website, 210 Ophelia Street. You'll see where the tax mailing goes. You can look that up, and there's a nice suburban couple living in Ross Township, profiting off of disruptive parties with the potential for murderous violence in our neighborhood. I would respectfully ask that some follow-up be done about that before we see the tragedy, unfortunately, that the north side saw.
Let me ask you, and
Yeah.
I didn't know the address when I got invited, because I wanted to know what address we're talking about. I know that the commander has it, but my question to you.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you lived there, and probably lived there for a long time.
I lived at my address since 1989, March of. So,
Just as an FYI, I'm born and raised in Oakland here, so I'm very familiar with it.
well, you trump me. As my neighbors who have been born and raised, let me know, you know, despite my 30+ years.
But my question to you is, did you notice a change of activity? I don't know if you know when it changed into an Airbnb or,
Here's what happened. So that was a house that burned down, became a city lot. City sold it in the side lot program for $250. Bought it, sold it for $50,000 to a developer who built a house. They attempted to sell it. They apparently couldn't sell it for what they were looking for. And this has been about 3-4 years now. It's been an Airbnb ever since. Yeah. And this is not an unknown house. We've talked about this in my neighborhood and through, you know, Oak Cliff and OPDC on numerous occasions to try and get some sense of, you know, how to really, I don't know, enforce a sense of give a good quality of life on suburbanites who are profiting from disruptive parties in our neighborhood.
As I say, to go back to my other statement, when you see that, it's never too late to put that out. We have things in the city that to track that vehicle from the moment we call it in. But we don't have to have a plate.
They didn't have a plate.
You did?
I did not know.
Yeah.
It happened so fast.
Well, you don't have to have a plate. All you have to have is a description, and if you can give a direction, it's good. And we can get on that right now. We can make a phone call and try to track the route of that car.
I'm gonna do that. I mean, 911 sort of knows me, because there's, illegal parking frequently in my block, and I'm not shy about calling about it, because I believe that that's an important part of enforcing a quality of life in our neighborhood. So, but I'm happy to make that call. If that is useful, so my mistake was, even as I watched that happen, and I said, holy crap, that's a gun, and it was gone, I should have still called 911 at that time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Even if you think it is, it may not be, it could be,
No, I clearly saw it. It was a semi-automatic. It was semi-automatic lock, stop, handgun. I couldn't tell the stop, the exact brand, but it was that.
What we want.
Sir. Those young kids, hopefully they have no business with that. Thank you.
I wish it was, it's, as I'm sure you're aware, it is a matter of age, the ghost guns. And the other guns that are on the streets currently, not just this city, but across the United States. I mean, 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds.
We'll definitely be on that address.
Yes, sir.
I'll keep in touch.
You want to speak with Officer Coelho from Pitt, because he did a knock and talk there a couple of days later. So,
Right.
yeah.
I
And
thought that
whatever.
was agreement. I mean, we used to do that with them. When the guy was here, we could go around and even speak to them, hang stuff on, when their doorknob is not there, that reach out to us, all about being a good neighbor.
Could we create some kind of process where, like, if I've got X Dawson Street and we've had 3 weekends where there's been 3 really noisy parties, can we request that an officer go and knock on the door?
Absolutely.
Especially to kind of see a pattern of that.
Oh, yeah, and as Kathy told, these houses are passed from groups, it's one friend tells another friend, and then they're gonna leave, and they tell a friend, oh, I'm leaving this house, and somebody else moves in, their friend moves in.
I mean, yeah, evidence or reason to contact the owner, or, if they're not being cooperative, and then we're there. So that will be our next step, because like you said, the kids come and go, they could care less. But if we go there, then we've done it with one of the properties in Greenville. I've called the owner. We sent registered letters, we're using up our manpower. We're coming there constantly. And then, that was when the disruptive property wasn't up and running, but we told them, that's where it's going.
Are there going to be many changes? I mean, right now, the disruptive property ordinance covers a variety of things. One of my favorite pet peeves, tall grass, which drives me crazy. But what is that going to get changed? What is actually a disruptive property by description? On Richard's property on the website, it's a huge long list. Is that being rethought?
I know that it was looked at a couple of years ago to revise it a bit. I would have to see where they're at with the revision on the ordinance. And again, it was looked at being revised to include some of the things that we couldn't do anything or cite for under the criteria previously. So I know Teresa Kell-Smith was overseeing that portion, and was tapped into see where we're at with that. But, that is a tool for us. I mean, we actually, and again, we've seen it work in the past where we actually were able to say to the owner, hey, look, this is what we have. This is the kind of problems your property is causing for the neighbors in the area. And it's been being used. We shape up or we're gonna take action. Again, if in the past we looked at agreements, now I think they're called as opposed to consent decrees, they're agreements to make changes, whether for whatever reason, whatever things they agree upon, the owner agrees to take action, to do things. And then it's other things continue to occur there, and they haven't done what they were asked of and agreed upon, then further action, legal action will be taken. So I mean, it's a tool, and even though it's being revisioned on our end here, we can start by educating with letters of education. Hey, there's a nuisance property here. This is what you have to adhere to under the ordinance. If this action is taken against your property, this is what will happen. Starting that as a letter of education. I mean, that's because we have not only owners of the building, but even the students, I think, should be notified that, hey, you're causing problems. It could be on the lease that says, if you continue to cause problems and get cited, it could be cause to break your lease. Those kind of things. I mean, it's educating both the students as well as homeowners, which I'm sure there's a number of them that have been aware.
Actually, the one big question that I do get from a lot of the landlords is, okay, what if this happens and then they're going to charge me every time somebody comes out on a call? What kind of money are we talking about? They're always what kind of money?
Well, if you take an officer or two and a police car, you add the salary, how much time were they there to respond? If we had 4 police cars, we had 4 officers there, taken out of service where the other community members didn't have that resource available to them. I mean, we have done it, and I've been on for quite a number of years. We have added up resources that we had to send out to address properties.
Yeah, I would like
And that's medics too, right?
Yes.
It's everybody that responds.
Well, it's just now May 4th. I feel like a letter should be sent to the owner of this house for the April 2nd incident. Your record of that 3 or 4 police cars and the number of officers staffing them responded to that incident and stayed for quite some time, to clear that out. If they don't know, and I completely disbelieve that they don't know, but they should get that letter. It's just a month from now since it happened. They should get a letter, and that however the disruptive property ordinance is currently administrated, it seems to me that this is clearly an incident that they need to be flagged for, right? And in the wake of the north side, you would hope that they would pay attention to it, right? Can that get done? I mean, can I just ask that letter will be sent to the owner of this house? I've given Rebecca, I know sometimes fast. I've given her the name.
Hey, Jeff, can I jump in? Hi, how are you, Jeff? Good to see you. We talked a little bit about that before you were able to join us, about the importance of making certain that the property owner is aware of what's taking place on property that they own. I would take your request just one step further, and that those reports should be sent to Airbnb as well. We were fortunate enough to have a conversation directly with Airbnb this afternoon. And perhaps, Jeff, you and I can take this offline, and we could, and you could give me a little further detail and the address again, so I could communicate it directly to Airbnb as well as the property owners. I think given what took place on the north side, we have found a very receptive ear in resolving at least these short-term rentals that are associated directly with Airbnb.
Happy to do so, Bruce. I'll send you an email either tonight or tomorrow and set something up.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mindful of people's time, it's coming up on 7:30, so if we could just keep that in mind here for the next couple of questions. If people have final comments, questions that need to be resolved.
Well, this particular incident on 210 Ophelia, were any citations written?
I don't think there was, because when I read the call, they responded to help, like I mentioned earlier. By the time they got there, Pitt was already evacuating the house, and I didn't see any citations issued.
Okay, you said Pitt didn't
Pitt
issue.
might have, I'm sorry, some people, I'm not sure.
Okay, is that information shared?
What's that?
Is that information shared with you? If Pitt writes some citations, do you get notification of that for that address?
I don't.
Jamie, is that something that we can look into, closing that loop?
Only time we can, whenever they do the Oakwatch, and they would share the
Right.
citations.
That's where you would get it, is from the Oakwatch meeting?
Well, yeah, they were,
I always assumed that police was speaking directly with Zone 4 at all times, and that you were getting, you know, when Pitt police. write
we
citations,
correspond
that's-
all the time, but we don't always talk about specifics. You know, I'll get the reports every week,
Oh my
the
goodness.
back of them, and then there I'll know what they are citing for various reasons. And I do read those reports every week.
So if they make a report for a party, and in the report it will say
Whether it's cited or
whether they
not.
cited it or not, that's the sharing of information. We don't get copies of the citations,
Right.
but we do get copies of the report.
Okay, does that information?
Yeah. It goes into a
So
file.
that's
There's
captured.
not a single unified system, is what you're saying.
What
There's
is
not
it?
one place where everybody's citations are
No,
recorded.
because, no, it doesn't, because we are different entities, you know. They are the university police, we are the Pittsburgh police, we don't share.
But when they write a citation, you know, it has the same legal force as law. as
Well, the
when you write a
courts would have
citation.
them,
Sorry?
the courts,
The courts would have them.
yeah, they would have the citations, but they all go down to the courts.
Okay, but given that there is this issue of, you know, tracking and enforcement, that the city of Pittsburgh perform that Pitt police do not directly perform, which is to say, keeping track of nuisance properties as well as, you know, identifying, you know, for the sake of neighbors here, what kinds of, you know, actions are taken. It's difficult for people to have to, you know, ascertain which enforcement agency it was that responded to their 911 call, since they call a single thing and then a cop car shows up. It's hard for them to know that they need to follow up with Pitt police as opposed to with Zone 4 in order to determine what action was taken for, you know, an event that was happening on their street. So maybe, Jamie, I can initiate a conversation that we could have to follow up. How can we create better information system sharing here so that it is possible, aside from an Oakwatch meeting once a month or once a quarter, to be able to share that information? I had no idea that that was how you guys could know about this, right? What if we figure out a way to close that loop a little better?
I'm happy to have the conversation, for sure.
Thank you so much. I was also kind of hoping to be able to Dean Gonzalo when she was here, but I appreciate she had to drop off, and I apologize for the last minute notice of this meeting in general. That maybe this is also emblematic of repeated issue that we keep on bringing up, that there's not enough for kids to do in Oakland, and that students are therefore, you know, look for house parties in Oakland as because there isn't much else that is available to them in terms of slightly more legitimate recreation. There is no movie house, there is no bowling alley, there is no pool hall, there is very little live music. There is not much to do that is underage or all is in Oakland anymore, and that has been a repeated issue that comes up again. So just throwing it out there one more time.
Yeah, I hear you. We work with Allison, you know, and we had that group that was sort of meeting and talking about some creative ways we might be able to create some experiences for students. And it seemed like we got stalled out a little bit, but you know, the university is thinking about investing in the off-campus experience with a lot more intention. And so I look forward to having a lot more people thinking about this and potentially a lot more programming for our students that are living in off-campus contexts, so that we can start to at least build some community and some support. It also gives us some more touch points, right, to get the messages out there that this is a neighborhood and that there are neighbors that deserve to have a positive experience here. So look forward to hopefully having some good news soon. We've got a number of proposals that are sort of making their way through the university for off-campus.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I want to figure out what the action items are for the different folks that are representing different departments here today. And it's always important for me to leave a meeting knowing exactly what is expected of me for follow-up as well as my colleagues. So could we just all review that together before we conclude?
I was hearing earlier that there needs to be a greater commitment to the reconstitution of the Disruptive Properties Office. If you were hearing from us at the beginning of the meeting that it would be helpful to revisit what the legal parameters are for issuing permits for block parties, because we had some preliminary discussion about that, but then, as you know, we all got enormously distracted by intervening, zoning legislation that has completely taken over everybody's lives since then. So yeah, we kind of dropped the ball a little bit on that. But yeah, so it would be nice to be able to revisit that now that it's an issue that we can devote some more attention to, since that was never satisfactorily resolved. And then I think we can talk, I would like to follow up with Jamie to begin talking about how to loop in hit police. And maybe I can connect them with Zone 4 better so that we can maybe come up with something that would be helpful for you as well as for them and as well as for us. A better system of sharing data, because it really seems like there are some strange black holes that we have never adequately understood why or where they are. So let's just figure out where those gaps are, and then maybe we can help to facilitate conversations about how to close them.
And how about the letter to Mr. Magno and Ms. Mary? Is that something that we would want?
I think the last one was confused.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But is it right?
Jeff has provided me with the contact info for, is this a function of, is it Angela, is that her name?
And Rundridge is on, but I think she is on.
She was
on. Yeah, she's
still connected. Yeah, I would encourage her, that's her job, to do the exact same thing I did, which is go to the county real estate website, look up 210 Ophelia. You'll see a tax mailing address on the general information page, and that takes you to the owner of the house, the apparent owner of the house. And so I think you want to make sure, be careful, but contact and say, do you indeed own this house? And if you do, here's what's happening at your house, and it violates city law. That would be my suggestion.
I think between the
So you
Zone 4 and working with, and we can get a letter out, we can also contact the owner, because we want those parties to stop.
Right.
And I don't think they realize what's happening, in addition to having the letter sent, also having us contact them and say, look, this is not, we're not going to tolerate, we have this issue that we've had, it seems to be growing inside, so we want to get a handle on it, and your property was identified. I'm sure working with both ends, we'd be able to get.
I'll certainly take the action that Councilman Kraus asked me about, and I'll follow up with him, to see if this house is even listed on Airbnb platform. I don't know that it is, but there are other short-term rental platforms that have sort of similar rules about the houses that appear on the platform. So I'll be happy to follow that up, but I want to stay coordinated, because I think in coordination is power and productivity. So I don't want to be too far outside of the mainstream of what you guys are doing. I want to make sure when I talk to Councilman Kraus that that's part of the ecosystem of working on this problem, so that I don't see this again. It would be the terriblest thing to have gunplay on Ophelia Street. Anywhere.
Okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up now. I want to thank everybody who attended via Zoom, phone, or in person. I think we've got some good steps to take over. And sharing information, as you said, information is power, and the more information you have, the better you can control what has been an ongoing irritation to the residents of the community. They need to feel that they're being heard. It's really important. Andrea?
Good. Councilman Lavelle, do you have any parting words?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Just asking if you had anything you'd like to add or wrap up with.
Only that I would be happy to phone the owner of their property as well too. You'd be surprised the effect that can have. We have had really large success rate from making a call from the office to the property owners. I think once they realize the repercussions of their insurance companies pulling their policies when things like this are happening, we tend to get their attention rather quickly. So, but Jeff and I will follow up with that tomorrow. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. It was a really productive meeting, and I was very happy to be here and participate. Thank you.
Hey, Bruce.
Yes.
One quick thought. As we would look to rebuild the disruptive property office, it seems to me that you should probably have the nighttime economy manager, Allison, be a part of that process.
Sure. Absolutely happy to, Daniel. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Lavelle, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for coming. Thanks so much for your time. The next Oakwatch meeting information is on the screen here, and you will obviously get email updates. And thanks again. Have a lovely evening.
Good night, everybody.
All right.